Simple cubic. There are 6 atoms in the hexagonal, close-packed unit cell. Each of the 12 atoms in the corners of the top and bottom of the hexagonal, close-packed structure has 3 layers of atoms. In each the top and bottom layer, there are 6 atoms that arrange themselves in the shape of a hexagon and a 7th atom that sits in the middle of the hexagon. The middle layer has 3 atoms nestled in the triangular grooves of the top and bottom plane. Note that there are 6 of these grooves surrounding each atom in the hexagonal plane, but only 3 of them can be filled by atoms. A hexagonal, close-packed structure. There are 6 atoms. Body, centered cubic unit cell. The body, centered cubic unit cell is a cube, all sides of the same length and all face perpendicular to each other, with an atom at each corner of the unit cell and an atom in the center of the unit cell.
Centered cubic unit cell has a particle at each corner and one in the center, which is colored pink to make it easier to see. With full-size spheres, you can see that the particles don't touch along the edges of the cube, but each corner particle does touch the one in the center. The actual unit cell consists of portions of the corner particles and the whole one in the center. 8/8 give one particle, and the one in the center gives another for a total of 2 particles. In this, more efficient stacking occurs if we place the second layer over the spaces formed by the first layer, and the third layer over the spaces formed by the second. That simple change leads to 68% of the available volume occupied by the spheres and a structure based on the body-centered cubic unit cell. Many metals, including all the alkali metals, centered cubic
Body, centered cubic unit. Simple cubic unit cell. The simple cubic unit cell is a cube, all sides of the same length and all face perpendicular to each other.
Cubic unit cells have particles at the corners of a cube. The simple or primitive cubic unit cell has particles at the corners only. In reality, the particles lie as close to each other as possible. Note that the particles touch along the cube edges but not along a diagonal in the face or along a diagonal through the body. By slicing away parts that belong to neighboring unit cells, we see that the actual unit cell consists of portions of the particles. When the cells pack next to each other in all 3 dimensions, we obtain the crystal. If we fade the others out, you can see the original group of 8 particles within the array and the unit cell within that group. We find the number of particles in one unit cell by combining all the particles' portions. In the simple cubic unit cell, 8 corners, each of which is 1/8 of a particle, combine to give 1 particle. 3 cubic unit cells arise. Arrange a layer of spheres in horizontal and vertical rows. Note the large diamond-shaped space among the particles. Placing the next layer directly over the first gives a structure based on the simple cubic unit cell. Those larger spaces mean an inefficient use of space. In fact, only 52% of the available volume is actually occupied by spheres. Because of this inefficiency, the simple cubic unit cell is seen rarely in nature. Cubic unit cells have particles.
Face-centered cubic unit cell. The face-centered cubic unit cell is a cube, all sides of the same length and all face perpendicular to.
Centered cubic unit cell has a particle at each corner and in each face, which are colored yellow here, but none in the center. The corner particles don't touch each other, but each corner does touch a particle in the face, and those in the faces touch each other as well. The actual unit cell consists of portions of particles at the corners and in the faces. 8/8 at the corners gives one particle, and half a particle in each of 6 faces gives 3 more, for a total of 4 particles. In this tiny portion of a face-centered cubic array, notice that a given particle has 4 nearest neighbors around it. For the most efficient stacking, shift every other row in the first layer so the large diamond-shaped spaces become smaller triangular spaces, and place the second layer over them. Then the third layer goes over the holes visible through the first and second layers. In this arrangement, called cubic closest packing, spheres occupy 74% of the volume. Note that it is based on the face-centered cubic unit cell. Centered cubic unit